On Sunday the 10th of December, just a few weeks ago, a 19-year-old man named Daquan Rountree ran from his home in Portsmouth, Virginia after attempting to take his own life. But after 3 weeks of searching, he is still yet to be found. The next day, Daquan was quickly reported missing by his father, as he was rightfully concerned for the safety of his child, given the young man had left the house with no clothes or his cell phone. However, later that day, a tip came in from a woman living nearby who claimed to witness a naked man running down the street around an hour after he disappeared. So with this new information, the Portsmouth police, working alongside the local community, then conducted several searches in the hopes they would find the troubled teenager. But despite the huge efforts of everybody involved, we are still no closer to finding out what really happened to Daquan Rountree, which has led many to wonder, could he have been picked off by a local predator in the area? Or could there be an even more sinister conclusion to this story? Daquan Rountree was born in the year 2004 to his loving parents in the city of Virginia Beach. Little was known about his upbringing, but from what I was able to gather, he was always an excellent student and an extremely hard-working individual, which was evident from his dedication to athletics, representing Bayside High School in track. However, as is the case for most families, Daquan's home life wasn't perfect, and his parents would eventually split, with his father moving out of Virginia Beach to a block near Pulaski Street in the neighbouring city of Portsmouth. But despite the difficulties he would inevitably experience, the young man didn't let this keep him down, as according to his friends and family, Daquan was also known for his uplifting spirit that seemed to rub off on everybody around him, and so it was no surprise that those close to the young man would always speak very highly of him. So with this in mind, I think it would be safe to say that it was likely this positive mindset that eventually led Daquan to start his venture on social media, where he would take the time to provide insightful life lessons to his followers, as well as teaching them to love themselves and to practice peace. However, with each new video that Daquan released, it seemed there was an underlying tone that was beginning to emerge, with the teenager appearing to delve deeper into the addictive world of self-development. And so, as he continued down this chosen path, it wasn't long before his mental state would seemingly reach its breaking point, eventually leading to his sudden disappearance towards the end of 2023. On Sunday the 10th of December, at approximately 11 PM that night, the 19-year-old was upstairs alone in his bedroom when he would make the strange decision to call his father, Gabriel Rountree, who at the time was just downstairs lying in bed. Daquan then asked his father if they could meet outside the house to speak, but understandably confused by the request, Gabriel first asked why. However, refusing to provide any more information, the pair eventually came to an agreement to meet outside the house for a brief discussion, and so Gabriel got dressed and headed for the front door. Once he arrived, Daquan was coming down the stairs, and the two locked eyes before continuing their conversation. But once again, he refused to divulge any details surrounding why he wanted to speak outside. But then, suddenly, out of seemingly nowhere, the young man leapt past his father and rushed towards his bedroom before grabbing a weapon and pointing it at himself. Now from this point, out of respect for Daquan's family, I have chosen to withhold the graphic nature of what happened next. But if you are interested, I implore you to listen to the harrowing words of his father in the video on screen now. I will also leave a link to it in the description below. But essentially, after wrestling his son to the ground, Gabriel then proceeded to lock his son outside the house, while he took the time to hide every single weapon that was available, including all firearms. And while this was going on, the screams of Daquan could be heard as he was banging on the door to be let back inside. Gabriel then continued to work his way around the house, removing all types of potential weaponry that could lead to a fatal incident, until eventually he noticed a deafening silence. He then rushed to the front door to check on his son, but was bewildered to see that Daquan had disappeared into the night, leaving behind all of his clothes and belongings. So, rightfully concerned for his son's mental well-being and overall safety, Gabriel decided to call the police to report the incident and to file an official missing persons report to the Portsmouth Police Department. On Monday the 11th of December, in the early hours of the morning, Daquan Rountree was spotted by two different girls as he was apparently running naked along the 900 block of 5th Street just an hour or so after he had first disappeared. Once this sighting was reported, the Rountree family then decided to head out to the area to see if they could find any other signs of Daquan, as it was extremely wet and cold outside at the time, so with every second that went by, the level of danger surrounding the case was increasing. The local neighbourhood then came together to search a number of different places, including shopping malls, dumpsters, wooded areas and railroad tracks. They also went around the streets knocking on doors with flyers displaying Daquan's face and information about his disappearance, in the hopes that somebody else may have seen the young man and would be able to provide further intel. However, after continuing to go out every single day for over a week after his disappearance, they were still unable to find any sign of Daquan, eventually leading the police to put out an Ashanti alert to ramp up the efforts in finding him. On Tuesday the 19th of December, around 9 days after his initial disappearance, the local community once again came together to search the local wooded areas surrounding Daquan's last known location. The search party consisted of dozens of family members, friends, local residents, and law enforcement officers, who all joined forces in an effort to locate the missing 19-year-old. At the time, the Portsmouth police chief named Stephen Jenkins even claimed there was still hope that Daquan could be found, despite this being their 6th official search. According to Daquan's father, Gabriel, the police were utilising specialised equipment such as drones, which were flying high above the area, and they were also relying on dogs to track Daquan's movements. However, despite one of the dogs initially getting a scent, the lead eventually ran dry, meaning the group had to continue searching blind, hoping a definitive piece of evidence would soon reveal itself. The unsuccessful search then spanned all the way across to 9th Street, where he was potentially seen by witnesses. However, once again, no further leads were discovered amidst the ever-increasing dangers surrounding the case. So at this point, Gabriel felt he had no other option than to hire a private investigator and to offer a reward of $1,000 to help find his son. But after a further week of investigation, updates continued to elude Daquan's family, eventually leading to the case once again going cold. Now, unfortunately, as far as the official investigation goes, this is all we know for now. However, from my research, it would certainly seem that Daquan's friends and family have been working tirelessly to keep spreading the word on their missing loved one, and I'm sure they will not stop until they finally get the answers that they so desperately need. But with Daquan being missing now for over 3 weeks, alongside the controversial circumstances of his disappearance, I can't help but feel that the likelihood of his safe return is looking more and more unlikely as the days pass. So, with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, as always, I would prefer to start off the theory portion of this video by discussing the most optimistic possibility here, which in my opinion would be that after running away from home, Daquan has since calmed down and chosen to stay hidden as a means of protecting himself. We know that he was a strong believer in self-love and positive thinking, so perhaps he felt his previous life was weighing him down, and after experiencing the distressing situation back at his father's house, he decided he would be better off leaving his old life behind. As far-fetched as it might sound, it would certainly explain why he hasn't been seen or heard from in over 3 weeks, because if he was already deceased, surely the police would have found something by now. However, what if the reason behind Daquan's lengthy disappearance is much more sinister in nature? What if he has been found, but by somebody who is keeping him hidden? Now, let me just preface this theory by stating I have absolutely no evidence to prove Daquan was kidnapped, but due to his body not being found, I feel it's an avenue we have to explore. So, could Daquan Rountree have been picked up by somebody while he was running naked through the streets of Portsmouth? Well, the short answer is, it's certainly possible, and with Daquan standing at just 5'4", it wouldn't be out of the question that somebody could have spotted the young man and grabbed him while nobody was looking, before forcing him into their car. Not only was Daquan out on his own in the middle of the night, but it was also cold and wet outside, which would have likely meant there would be less witnesses around to see the crime take place. Not to even mention, he would have also been naked at the time as well, giving a potential suspect even more reason to take advantage of the situation, as they would have immediately noticed that Daquan was unarmed. However, if somebody did decide to kidnap Daquan, why do we have no CCTV footage alluding to this fact? Well, it's very possible that the young man could have been picked up in an area with weak surveillance, or perhaps the police just haven't checked enough cameras yet. But either way, with Daquan still being missing after 3 weeks of searching, the reality of the situation is troubling to say the least, especially considering the fact that Daquan suffered a mental health episode shortly before he disappeared. But if a potential abductor isn't to blame for Daquan's lengthy disappearance, then who else could be responsible? Well, as heartbreaking as it is to say, I think we can all agree that a very strong possibility here is that Daquan himself could be responsible by choosing to take his own life. He did attempt to commit the act shortly before he ran off, so it would be a small step to contemplate he may have done it again, but this time been more successful. But if that was in fact what happened, then why have we been unable to find his body for so long? Surely he can't have got very far running barefoot in the middle of the night, and after the meticulous searches, you'd expect a shred of evidence to have revealed itself by now. Well, I'm sure there are a series of possibilities that could explain how Daquan could have taken his life and made it so he would never be found. But out of respect for his family, I will refrain from going into any more detail here. But using your imagination and looking at how other victims have chosen to perform such an act, I'm sure you can draw your own conclusions anyway. However, without any hard evidence as of yet to inexplicably prove that this is what happened, I feel we have to keep investigating his case, and maintain the hope that Daquan is still alive out there, somewhere. But to ponder the thought for just a moment longer, if Daquan did take his own life, it really does make you think, why are so many young people of colour suffering from such a large number of mental health problems as of late? Now, before I go on, I feel it should be said that in every missing person case, there are always going to be questions surrounding the validity of an eyewitness testimony. But personally, I am inclined to wholeheartedly believe Gabriel Rowntree's timeline of events, purely based on the demeanour in which he tells his story. However, taking a step back from Daquan's case, it cannot be denied that there does seem to be somewhat of a mental health crisis occurring within the youth of America. But what could be causing this devastating epidemic? Well, an obvious argument would of course be the influences of social media in modern times, with teenagers spending around 4 to 6 hours on these platforms every single day. And with this enormous usage likely comes a strong pressure to fit in, plus no doubt a lack of self-esteem due to comparing themselves to others. Also, despite the awareness that's been raised by governing bodies around the negative effects of social media, these makeshift solutions appear to have been nothing short of useless, with more young people of colour choosing to end their lives than ever before. But outside of social media, there are also a plethora of other possible reasons why people of colour are choosing to take their own lives, including the stigma that gets attached to mental health in the black community, the poor accessibility of treatment for people in low-income areas, the violence that young people are susceptible to, all alongside the underlying racism and discrimination that many black people still face to this day. However, despite these factors clearly still being prevalent in today's society, to a certain degree at least, you can't deny the fact that most of these points have been around for decades, and yet this mental health epidemic seems to be more of a modern day issue. So with this in mind, I don't think it would be too controversial to say that social media and the internet in general would be the key outlier here, and I think we can all agree that it has now reached new levels of devastation ever since the development of short-form content on platforms such as TikTok. But perhaps the issue isn't necessarily down to social media itself, but rather what's being discussed on these platforms. As I mentioned, with most teenagers spending around 4 to 6 hours on social media every single day, it's no wonder we are seeing more and more young people losing grip on their realities and falling deeper into the unrealistic worlds they find themselves addicted to. Anyway, with that, I think I'll leave this video here. But as always, if you have any opinions of your own about anything that was discussed in this video, please leave your comments down below, as I would love to get a conversation going about the link between mental health and missing person cases. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you found this video interesting, feel free to check out the playlist on screen now, where I've covered a range of similar cases, such as the disappearance of Jamel Lee Hyung, who after 1 month of searching, is still yet to be found.